session, and we're going to try and get through 60,000 words of a book in about 19 slides. So that's my challenge for today, and it's to give you an idea, an overview of what the book is, and hopefully that then there's time for questions, so the stuff that you found particularly interesting, I can see if I can remember what I wrote in my book for it. So this is coming out in February, this book. I was commissioned to write it, I started about a year ago, having spent most of my life working with over 18, so it's been really interesting to look at what specific issues there are with the under 18s. So this is probably what you've been used to seeing. Every time you look in the newspaper, people are committing suicide, they're addicted to their screens, everything's terrible because the technology has come in and taken over our lives. That's it. If you just read top newspapers, that's what you would think is going on. We're all being abducted, we're all giving away all our information, we're running out massive bills, we're sitting on the couch doing absolutely nothing whatsoever. Kate looks like she agrees with that. But this was really kind of where my starting point was coming from. But if we think about how news works, by its very nature, it's looking for the new and the unusual. So if it's making it into the press, it is hopefully a sign that it's more unusual, but it's also a warning sign that we can do something about it. And the press often makes us feel like there's very little we can do about it. And actually there is quite a lot. And I questioned 120 people via an online questionnaire. Well, I asked thousands, responded, which is not a bad response. We got a whole load of really, really interesting responses. So I had a little debate with publishers about whether I wanted to put a little bit from history in there. My background is as a historian, as a communications historian, and I think history is really important to tell us why we don't need to panic so much today. We've blasted through things before, and every single technology that we've looked at, the TV, the pen, every single piece of technology, people panic and think, oh my goodness, it's a disaster, we can't do anything about this. There's other people who realise that this is just something we've got to go through. And I still remember I grew up in a Brethren church with no TV. It was not seen as appropriate. So when I was 17 and we got the first TV, I sat and watched TV for hours on end. I was completely undiscriminating about what I watched because I was just so excited to have one. And I think we've kind of got to go through that phase and get used to new ways of doing things. And I think we see the same with this. And the term that is used is technological determinism, is the idea that every new technology forces us to behave in a new way, whereas actually I think we've got quite a lot of choice. It does give us new opportunities. There's a journalist called Dan Gardner who says, we're the healthiest, wealthiest, safest generation in history, but we're the most terrified, partly because of mass media. We can see so much. And he talked particularly about 9/11 and how after that people were taking less flights and more road. But because road accidents do not have the kind of press, people didn't realise that 5,000 more people died on the roads, which was a lot more than died in 9/11, in the whole in the airplane at least. So he said, but it's not newsworthy in the same way. So let's kind of think about how that works. And we also think about how families have changed. I think we've become more child-focused and we expect children to make more decisions, and that affects how we do these things. And the types of families we've got have changed, so we've got to deal with split families and step families and all sorts, whereas you might be living with the mum one weekend and the dad the other. And you've got to have some kind of consistency between that. So this is literally my chapter headings for my book, so we're kind of going through the book. The other place where a lot of all of this started is in 2008. Professor Fanny Byron, a psychologist, wrote a report for the government. And right at the end, she said that I found the more I understood what my children were experiencing, the more I felt empowered to support them to go online responsibly and safely, and the more freedom I felt comfortable for them to have. And that was kind of the tack I was taking on my book, is we want to get the parents more confident users, because you don't really have an option to just say to kids you can't use it. It's part of everyday life, so we want parents more comfortable. And the more that parents understand what's going online, hopefully the more they know how to deal with any threats they see their kids facing. Oh, sorry, children, I had to get rid of the word kids in my book. And I'm also excited by the possibilities, and we came from that side. A lot of these kind of books are written by people from the police force who've seen absolutely the worst of this kind of thing, so it's all very much protection, 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 whereas it's actually, we're in exciting times, so let's look to take the most of that. And whether we choose to actively participate online or not, this stuff has all affected all of us. So we're thinking about what does digital culture look like. It's more ephemeral in that it disappears, but it's also more permanent, because you look at it within, you know, a tweet has a shelf life of about 5 minutes or something, I can't remember quite how much it is, but it's also there for hundreds of years afterwards, as long as the server can cope with it. It's difficult to remove, but it's easy to change it, replicate it, share it, and that can make it quite hard to distinguish between what someone originally said and what someone's actually seen in front of them, so the message can go through kind of Chinese whispers. What you may have written about may not be the bit that gets picked up and shared by other people, because they pick up on a different bit of it. And for some people there's a feeling of a sense of kind of invisibility, which makes them think that they can kind of get away with doing stuff online. But actually online, someone sent me something really nasty about 6-7 years ago, and one of my friends said, I'm just going to go and have a look, and he said it's one of these 5 people in the world had sent it to me, because you can trace, I can't do it personally, but there's plenty of people who can, so it's not actually that possible to be.
What a name was that?
Is that better? So yes, we need. I really think we need to be digitally literate in this culture, and really think about the idea of not blaming the technology. The same as if you had a brick, you could throw it through the window, or you could start building a house with it. I think the same with technology. It's kind of how we use it. And lots of easier ways to stay in touch, and lots of great opportunities for those with special needs. And for any of you that know me, you know I kind of get upset by the idea of people talking about virtual worlds. I do think Second Life is a virtual world, but I think things like social media are not virtual. There's real people engaging on there. It's just the tool that we're using is different. The same as you wouldn't say your pen friend is a virtual friend. So I then did a little chapter trying to give an overview of the tools that are around at the moment. I know that's going to date the book probably quicker than anything else could, but actually things like Facebook and Twitter have been around for 5 or 6 years, so actually there's quite a lot of stability in there, so it'll be interesting to see how quickly that does date. And lots of platforms have been bought by each other, so it's kind of more small changes around the edges. And really what I focused on in that chapter was understanding how to kind of change your privacy settings and understanding what kind of information you were giving away. So it was kind of worth going with that. And this is really thinking about how our children behaving online. Technology has become cheaper and more accessible, but that doesn't necessarily mean all kids are totally involved in this. My niece and nephew posts maybe every 3 months, say he's passed his tractor test or something. My niece is putting selfies up every 5 minutes. Some people would say that they're all digital natives, so therefore they all love technology. As far as I can see, very different. We're human beings, so we behave differently. They're not beyond our reach, they're still human beings. We've just got to take the time to understand them individually, the same as we do with everything else. So how can we help them make more positive choices? And I did quite a lot in this chapter about how things change in the teenage years, because 13 is where lots and lots of platforms you're legally allowed to go onto them. So Facebook, you're not supposed to be on it before 13, Twitter, Instagram, all of those not supposed to be on before 13. It's largely based on US legislation, but it affects the rest of the world. And then I did quite a lot about advertising and consumerism, and a slight bit about the digital divide, as in everybody pretty much has access to technology, but there's a real difference between owning your own device and having to go to the library and having an hour, which means you end up doing your homework and you don't join Facebook because you haven't got time, because you've got very limited use. And thinking about who people turn to. So how do we make sure that their parents or their carer are the one that they turn to, rather than random people online because they feel like they're not being listened to. This was kind of the core message of a lot of my book, is talk. and communicate with your children. I think there are many parents who are nervous of talking about sex about technology. And actually one person said they should have technology education lessons before they have sex education lessons. And I'm not quite sure what I think about that, maybe. I think the two have started to go hand in hand, actually, a lot of what's online. So communication is kind of the most powerful tool. And we talked about the idea that if you're going to talk negatively about technology, try and include lots of positive stuff as well. So people come up with a kind of balanced idea. And Chelsea Clinton apparently used to grow up with her dad and mum. They'd sit around the table, they'd turn the radio off, but they'd talk about what they'd heard on the radio, what they'd seen on the TV. And I think it's probably slightly unusual, but actually still really nice. So the whole fact that we don't tend to sit down for dinner anymore has affected all those kind of things. And then I've talked about internet safety agreement. So some books give you an internet safety agreement, but the best ones, as far as I could tell from my research, are the ones that are done in conjunction with your child. So they're individual and you talk it through, so you've both got buy-in. Privacy, Pete could probably tell us loads more about this because he's researching lots of it. But thinking about this is actually quite important. Martha Payne, I don't know if you saw her, did Never Seconds blog. She blogged about her school dinners and how poor they were. Yeah, so she gets lots and lots of comments, and she's only 9 years old. So she talks about how her dad checks all her emails before she reads any of them, so she doesn't see anything nasty. She's only allowed an hour a day online. She can choose how she spends it, but she's only limited to an hour. And this was kind of the general sense: is the younger the child is, the more you need a walled garden, where you can only go on these 10 sites. The older they get, the more you need to give them more and more responsibility, because they're going to take it anyway, so the more you can do it in conversation with them, the better. Zuckerberg thinks privacy is dead, the guy that set up Facebook, but actually kids seem to be quite intelligent about this. And the advice we've kind of said is if they're not, it's not the end of the world. Sit down and talk with them and think about how you're going to rescue that. Because if you fly off the handle, it's all going to go horribly wrong. I was being quite careful not to give parenting advice, but I feel like I've got some coming through. It was more about helping people understand the environment. In this chapter, I was also looking at the pros and cons of monitoring and filtering. I'm not particularly in favour of filtering because I think it's far too easy to get around, particularly once kids get older. But it can be quite a good tool for younger kids.
Just explain filtering.
So you can kind of set up either a whitelist or a blacklist. So a whitelist will only let in the sites you list, a blacklist will block sites. And you can say that this internet network won't receive any sites from here. So lots of schools will blacklist Facebook. And then, well, that's a different conversation. But yeah, so is it useful? People say it's the only way to stop people getting porn and this kind of things. But none of these systems are sophisticated as a human being. You'll still get an average. If you blacklist certain porn sites, you'll still get about 30%. So it's better to work with your kids as to what they're looking at, I think. And we also talked about location services where you check in, and the biggest advice is don't check into the same place every day so that someone can follow you. So if you always check in at the coffee shop at 3 o'clock and talk about what school you go to or something, if someone does want to follow you, you've made it really easy for them. It's not normal, but it's just kind of common sense, I think. Does that help? So, I don't know how I'm doing on time. That's all right, it doesn't look too bad. So thinking about, I then had a whole chapter about trying to think about the identity we want online. And we've been talking quite a lot about Sherry Turkle and the idea of Photoshop selves. And the idea that we're only projecting a particular image of ourselves online. And I would say yes, you probably are, because you're thinking before you press the send button, hopefully. And I think that's okay. But I think we do that in every situation. So the same as this morning when I got up, I nearly forgot I was doing this and was going to come in as scruffy, and then I thought, no, I'm going to talk about the internet, I'm going to wear my Tweet No Evil t-shirt. So it's kind of, you think about it the whole time. And I think we need to raise people's awareness that people aren't sharing everything about themselves online. Lots and lots of kids will just say, yeah, I know their life looks perfect, but I know they're not sharing everything online, so you just have to accept it's not reality what you see online. So it depends. I'm more in favour of sharing some of the difficulties, but not all of them. Makes sense. But a lot of that thinking comes from the early days of the internet and it's kind of filtered down into our everyday thinking now. And then I put in this real thing about children needing role models. If their parent is wandering around with their phone permanently attached in their hand at the dinner table or wherever, the kids are going to think that's okay, despite what you're telling them, because you've not really got any legs to stand on. And one of my friends actually, they realised that they came in and their little 2-year-old came up with the phone and went, "Mummy," because she knew Mummy loved her phone and thought that was the way to get her attention. So they made a decision that they kind of have a little shelf inside the door, and when they get in from work, the phones go down at least until the child has gone to bed. Because I think that doesn't mean they don't get the screens out with the daughter, but they're just really thinking about how they use that. And I had a whole load of stuff in here as well about disinhibition, the idea of sitting behind a screen, meaning you feel like you can say more. And that doesn't have to be negative. It can release people to do kind of bullying behaviour, but it also means you can ask questions that could be really difficult. And Riley's doing her dissertation on seeing whether people share their faith differently online, so whether there's a positive side to that. And how much I'm about to write a report on anonymity, so you'll get more on that when I've done that, I guess. Thinking really about relationships, I really didn't want a chapter called cyberbullying. There's tons and tons of books about cyberbullying out there, and it is a worrying topic for people. But I think the media's made it worse, and in fact one of the specialist researchers says she thinks the more that the papers say we're in a cyberbullying epidemic, the more that people who think about doing it think, oh, it's okay, it's normal, and the people who are suffering from it think this is just a rite of passage I have to go to, which I think is quite interesting. And I think most of the behaviours are the same, and in the cyberbullying chapter was the one that took me the longest to write, was trying to think about what is different in there. I mean, this I thought about friendships in general. The idea of friend has changed quite a lot with Facebook using it as a word. And children in particular feel that they can't not accept friend requests from people that they're in contact with day to day, because it affects their school life. So they feel like they have to accept everyone to be part of that. And actually most of their friends online are offline friends, so most of them don't have hundreds and hundreds of online friends. So a huge amount of thinking about online etiquette, who do you connect with, how quickly do you respond. Children in particular have a thing about being available to respond really quickly, which I think is quite scary. When you need to focus on something and you're responsive to the bing. I try and turn all my noises off when I'm trying to concentrate. So how do we help them with that? And even the kind of things that they like will of course get a response from their friends. They have to think about that. We do as well. There's been worries about Facebook depression, that people see everyone else with really shiny lives and they get depressed about it. The more solid research that's done with it actually says those who are more social offline are probably more social online because they're naturally social. And most people, I think it says something like 4% of people feel like their life is worse, and 90% of people think their life is better because of their online connections. And then I summarise cyberbullying as a huge issue: the speed of things coming, the constancy. So before you maybe would have got away from it, now it's just they can send text after text after text. It's the not being getting away with it. When I talked to Maggie Dawn about this, and she said, well, when I was younger, they could just put a note in your book and it would fall out. So it's not that it doesn't go beyond the front door of your house, but it is bigger and it's just harder to get away from. And there's a chance of a digital pile-on, so everyone else kind of comes in as well. So when I gave my talk at CNMAC the other week, I said we need to think about the bullied, the bully and the bystander, and we all have a role to play. So we don't think of the bullied as a victim, as someone who has choices, and we need to work together. So if you saw someone give one negative comment, you'd all pile on and give a positive, because then that would say to the person bullying, this is not acceptable. But we have to kind of make a conscious effort to do that. And I wrote down about stranger danger, which is actually incredibly rare, but as you know, online dating and things like that have become more normal, it's not surprising that kids want to meet people online too, so we have to think about how we do that safely, rather than saying again, you can't make friends with someone you don't know. I'm not going to do it quite in 19 minutes, but never mind. We've got more and more mobile. They're cheaper. Contracts have become much easier to use, so actually less and less kids are on pay-as-you-go. More and more of them on contracts to include data and unlimited text. So lots of people take that. There is a real, if you've heard the phrase FOMO, fear of missing out, a real worry that if you put this down, you're going to miss something. And it's how do we help people deal with that? We actually get not a lot of digi-free time. So how do we build that in? You know, do we have to set rules about what we're going to use stuff for to help us use it? Or have we got a healthy relationship with it? Lots and lots of people worried about having an e-babysitter. You just give this over and let the child play with it. Although it's seen as okay if it's for educational purposes, but then there's some, you know, what counts as an educational purpose. So it's sort of work with them as they download this stuff, ensure the password's on so that they can't download extra stuff. Apple's made it harder actually to download all those extras that led to massive bills. So lots of simple things you can do. And I always think it's funny that people think you're kind of addicted to a phone, but you're not addicted to a book, whereas I can totally lose myself in a book for 12 hours at a time. So we need to make sure mobile phone costs are managed. The questionnaire I got back said secondary school was kind of the age it's okay maybe to get a phone. And a smartphone probably around about GCSE time, although I know people are kind of getting them younger, but that seems to be the general gist of when people thought it was okay. And lots of worries about short text. What have I put in here? That's a lovely slide. Again, I was trying not to have a chapter that was called porn, but it didn't really make sense without the subtitle in it. So we're saying here, what happens online is kind of exaggerated behaviour that tends to happen offline. The dangers of porn, the press tends to kind of condense them all down into one massive thing. And for years, I guess lots of people have been through this as a rite of passage. But whereas before, we had to kind of sneak in to your newsagent and get something off the top shelf and all of that, it's now very easy to get to. And this was the one that I feel like I've got the least answers for, actually. But it is saying it's changing expectations of normal sexual behaviour. Boys seem to check it out more, which is probably not that surprising. But there's a sort of danger that you might not expect, as it is illegal to see pictures of or have photos of girls under 16. And if they fancy them and they've sent them kind of picture in their underwear or something, then they're actually potentially liable for illegal. Recipient as well, because they've got it on their phone. So, I mean, there's stuff that they say if the police look at it and you delete it kind of straight away, you're probably better off, because this is a concern for teachers as well, just in case a kid gets hold of a number and sends it. They say if you delete it really quickly. Numbers of paedophiles are difficult to determine as they tend not to self-declare. So most of the stats we tend to come from the filtering companies that want us to buy their product, so they tend to be quite huge. That's not to say they're not there, but actually most people are in danger, more danger from people that they know. So it's more about knowing who your kids are in contact with and making those conversation avenues open. And don't forget that technology can help you find kids as well if they've been taken away. You know, if you've got the right kind of technology. Say if they've got a phone tucked in here with the GPS on. And sexting, if you've seen that as well, people send kind of sexually aware text is quite a big problem, but is actually a new version of if you don't do that, I'm going to ditch you in a kind of technical form. So children need real encouragement about what's okay to share and what's not okay to share. Then we looked at law. People see the internet as the Wild West. It's not. It's still controlled by the laws, usually the country that you're posting in, and increasingly look at global yours, but I wrote lots of stuff here about plagiarism in music and film and apps and what's kind of sharing around there. And actually, you're probably more in danger from the viruses that you download than from anything else. And there's an increasing number of people who actually are buying legitimate stuff, and it's how do we kind of keep that safely going. You've then got the idea of how to be healthy, and I start with how to set up your desk properly. And then we're looking at things like there's a real worry about people going online, particularly with eating disorders, and finding sites which tell them how to be better anorexics. And it's sort of helping parents be aware that that's out there, and helping them deal with that, because there's kind of suicide sites that tell you how to kill yourself, and it's parents need to be really aware that those are there. Lots and lots of people are worried about brain changes, but I think everything you do is going to change your brain anyway. Every time I was going to say play going, God, it's not something I do, but if I did, I'd be learning something different. So I think we've really got to worry about that. And then addiction. Is it really addiction? A number of people I hear say I'm addicted. I'm like, well, I don't think you really are. Is it affecting schoolwork? Is it affecting your attention span? Can people really multitask? Are these things all bad, or are we just saying it's not how it was in my day? Conversational ability. People think that's disappearing because we're talking. I don't think that's really a problem. I think people are learning how to just talk in a different way. Couch potatoes. I think then parents need to look at what their kids are engaging with online and look for, if they're playing FIFA online, then take them to a real football match. I just said real, that's shocking.
Actual.
Yeah, so physical. Take them to a physical football match. So I think it's really about looking at what they like and looking for something that either engages the computer in a different way.
What is he looking at? His face is kind of like...
Stock photo. Stock photo man. I was going for different nationalities, that's what So the standard advice for years has been keep your computer in a central room in the house. That's kind of duff advice now. If you've given them a smartphone, they've got it in their room. Although you can always say they can't have it in their room at night, you're still the parent. I think thinking about American Association of Pediatrics for years and years and years has said children shouldn't have more than 2 hours of screen time, and most have way more than that in mix of TV, tablet, mobile.
You're going to take questions after, because I have... Okay.
Yeah. I'm nearly at the end, I think. Yeah. So really think about bedroom culture. How do we think about what we've got in our rooms? I just slept at a friend's without a TV, and I think I've slept better than my own room. Digital timeout and reading online. Doesn't matter if you're reading on one of these, as long as you're reading. Gaming, not my thing really. I got sucked into Candy Crush for about 2 months. Cost me about £100, so gave up. But games online are getting more and more complex, whereas before you had a game and you got to the end of it and you were done. They're all open-ended now. So there's a real danger that people can just sit and play with them, because the longer they spend online, the better they do in the game. And gamers have sort of built in this just one more thing. But there's some good stuff that comes out of them. Some argue that it's increased dexterity, sociability, especially for autistic kids, or sort of debating whether that transfers into the face-to-face environment. And then there's worries that it's violent, addictive, and expensive. But if you look back at similar fields about video films, media studies stuff for years has said it's much more complex than that. There's a lot more to it. And in fact, the people who are attracted to playing those kind of games already like that. So you need to think about that. So lots of stuff that technology can do gives us a chance to prepare for the job market. Needs to be critical, needs to be aware of scams, collaboration, and we can do lots of social justice. I can't remember what I wrote on this bit. Maybe I really didn't see what I said. I finished. That's exactly what I wrote. There's Will Taylor wrote on Facebook right towards the end of my book, and so I put it in the book, is do it for them, do it with them, watch while they do it, let them do it for themselves, which I think is a really good mantra for sort of helping kids engage. So all I'd done was I then put a few thoughts, particularly for grandparents, because they're increasingly involved in looking after children, so you need some consistency. Teachers, a lot of their concerns are particularly defensive and protective, but it's kind of how can you do that and still encourage the kids online. And youth leaders need lots and lots of good boundaries. And then I played around with a bit of futurology. The only constancy is change. So none of us can 100% predict the future. So the more we can give people confidence that, no, that's right. The analogy we quite often use is the idea of swimming. So you wouldn't chuck a child in the pool and leave it. Well, maybe not. But you probably help them with the right aids and all this kind of thing. So I'm saying that's really what we need to do here. So, yeah, sorry I took slightly longer saying that. I knew that was a little bit optimistic. Any
Yeah, because I was thinking about something similar the other day, because when Fletcher was younger, I was able to say to him, okay, 1 hour, a day, and go and do something, go play with your toys. But and so the other day, I think it was last week, I said to him, he was spending too much time on this, we need to look at how doing something differently. I was walking him and I thought, hang on a minute, that's his toy.
Yeah.
And I was saying to Calvin that when we were growing up, we had friends that we could just pop to their house. We didn't have to wait for parents to get the diaries together. Mm-hmm. We just go to a friend's house after school. I mean, I grew up in the Caribbean. Yeah. And so we were out all the time. And so we've been doing stuff. So it's a completely different age that our kids are living in. And that really challenged me, because I thought, well, how do I then do this then? Because I'm saying to him, find something else to do. But what is he going to do? Everything, all his toys are within this, either it's on a computer or his Xbox or his Wii or whatever. And that's a real challenge, I think, for parents. And how do you say to a 13-year-old, you can only have 1 hour, then what is he going to do for the rest of the afternoon? Once he's done his homework.
Yeah. Which is probably on a computer as well.
Exactly. So you come and say, I've got homework, it's on a computer, and after I've said, you can't have computer time. Yeah. And it's quite a difficult thing to sort of manage. And so I haven't got the answer. I'm still thinking about it as to how I can help him not to spend, because I do want him to spend less time in front of the screen.
Why? Why do you want him to spend less time?
I don't know. I think it's just a thing. When I was younger, my mum's always said, go read a book. But then we had no telly, so I don't know. But I don't have the answer yet. I'm still thinking about it. And I've said to him, okay, we need to think about different things you can do, and I want you to think about different stuff you would like to do. But because I saw him for hang on a minute. I can't say go play with your toys. He's 13.
But also, Edward's school books are on his iPad.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So go and read a book. He reads Pride and Prejudice.
That's
on his iPad. So telling him not limiting the screen time can actually limiting the amount of time you can go on bite-sized revision courses, online stuff, online school stuff.
Is there something here about not imposing our experiences and values? Because I relate exactly to what you were saying, but it was a different age.
Yeah, and that's what kind of shocked me when I was walking in. I thought, hang on a minute, it's different, Ramona. You can't expect them to.
And the screen for us was the telly.
Yeah.
We had children's TV at a fixed time. You watch that and that's it.
Yeah.
I think it just isn't like that.
I think the thing that a lot of us forget is that actually young people can be incredibly creative when they're online. So they could be making something. So I've seen a lot of the lads on Tuesday night when they come for communion, they're playing on Minecraft, and I know that one of Chris's sons built a scale model of their home in Minecraft, which is really quite creative and quite kind of interesting and clever. And it's not a passive thing that they're doing. But actually, quite a lot of kids are creating animations. They're, I dreamed as a child of going on Rolf's Cartoon Club and being able to make my own animation, and now kids can do it like that for free.
I dreamed of having an etch a sketch.
Just like so I think we kind of think because we're passive when we're looking at a screen, that the children are, but actually they're not, because they're creating things.
Oh, not
they're making stuff.
Play games.
Yeah.
But it's sketch right.
It's
Doodle, okay. It's Doodle. I've got
So I
a
want you
my
to
two.
But yes, and I'm you know, as a parent, I want to help him, and you know, but
It's a bit too old for the lolly sticks that my friend uses. She has pop with lolly sticks on, and they pull it out, and it says, you know, play with X. And sometimes it's computer.
Yeah.
One of them says clean the lounge. But they're a lot younger than yours, so I think
well, I do get them to do the housework as well, but it's that kind of thing as parents. It's we're sort of caught between what we know and what the age is now. We have to try to sort of get the balance, and
I
I think
think
it's
if
quite
you're
difficult.
talking about it, that's the main thing, because you're not saying to Fletcher that's okay, you can just play it on your device for hours, and we're not worried about that. I mean, of the advice about, I'm trying to remember what I wrote about sort of eyesight and stuff, there's no research that says it's
No, well, you
not bad for your eyesight, but people are saying we don't know enough yet, so we should
said
be.
that about telly.
Yeah, and reading. I'm still about reading as well.
Isn't the thing that
You only have an hour.
the lollipop thing actually now has to say, go and play on PlayStation for an hour, then go and do some revision for an hour, which may involve another screen, which may then go and read a book for an hour, which may need another another screen. The thing is, we can't say to kids only be digital for an hour. Because that's our culture, and it's completely and utterly anathema to kids, to young people's culture.
You might be using a map.
Yeah, that's right. But to say only be digital for an hour a day is to say turn your life off for the other 23 hours.
Yeah.
And that's wrong.
Well, that's what I realised. I think, well, what am I asking him to do? Just sit there and stare at the walls, and that's not really right. And initially, before he had the games, I said I said screen, and then I realised that he would say, "Oh, can I watch some telly?" I went, "Oh, that's the screen as well." So then I have to then change my language and say, "Okay, what is it I want him to do?" Do I say, "Okay, 1 hour of television and then 1 hour on your Xbox or Wii or whatever," rather than making it a sort of blanket thing and change my language?
Or do you actually make other things so interesting, or involve the digital device in everything else?
Sorry, say again.
So you could, rather than saying ban something, can you find other things that you're doing as a family? I mean, I've seen you guys playing games and things.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like you're depriving him, because I think it's the same as the guy who wrote about the digital native idea. He's then, which I don't really agree with, but he's then trying something where he's put like an iPad in a box with like 12 other toys, and found that after the first couple of weeks that they were using everything in there. But I think that's not what you guys have seen. I mean, I know anytime I go around to Pete's.
Well, I think that's the difficulty. I mean, I think that you said something about children being different and approaching from different ways. With my daughter now, I can't. She now has a laptop that she bought. I wouldn't have bought it, but she bought it with her own money. And so then I have a different discussion. Then I have to have and say, okay, how do I? So what I then have to do is, if she hasn't done a chore, then I can say, right, you're not allowed to do X, Y, Z. But other than that, my hands are sort of tied.
My mum did the same with books, though. I'm a complete bookworm because we have no TV, and I can disappear, and I can read for hours, and totally not. I'm quite sociable, I think. I'm quite happy not to speak to anyone because I've lost myself in a whole load of fictional lives, and I think TV is the same. We've lived our lives through various characters, neighbours and EastEnders. I kind of think at least they're speaking with other human beings.
But there is most imagination. Don't use my imagination.
Yeah, well, it depends.
Not
necessarily.
The author's describing situations, characters, problems, and so on. You have to look a bit harder to imagine the characters and imagine the situations. And you do on television. Yeah,
I think. I mean, I kind of think this is better than TV, and being a book lover, I carry hundreds of books with me all the time on Kindle now. I still love a physical book, but a lot of the time when I'm on the train, I travel a lot, and I'm trying to travel light. It's amazing. So, I mean, this is why I think everyone needs to keep talking. So essentially what I've tried to do in my book is give a sense of what the digital environment looks like, so that parents can make choices within that, and say to parents, this has to be part of your conversation.
When you looked at the picture stuff, did you look at Snapchat and those kinds of things at all, whether the image kind of comes up and then disappears? Because as a youth worker, I was finding that they were just starting to get into that, and that was becoming a problem. And I know that there were schools in the area who had an issue with kind of underage pictures being sent and stuff. Like, did you look at any of that?
Yeah, but it's more again about trying to get your child to understand what they're doing with that data and where it goes and who it will be seen by. Because then they realise that it's not just being seen by the other person. So what I've written at least twice in the book is that Snapchat has to go through a server before it ends up on the phone, which means there's a record of it somewhere. It's not completely private. And although the software is supposed to tell you if someone screen saves it, there's nothing to stop someone doing this with a camera at the top. So again, I think it's not don't go on it. I think it's children need to understand where their data goes, so that they can be more prepared and think about what actually goes on there. Which is why I think it comes back to conversation.
Yeah, just on those things you said about there are age limits for Facebook and those kind of things. But how real is it that it's 13 and above? I know.
Yeah, it's not.
There's 7, 8, 9-year-olds. My daughter's friends, they've got Facebook pages. Their parents are quite happy for them to have them on there, and they're putting inappropriate pages. I mean, I've had to defriend them because it's like we were only on there so we could chat to friends who are distant from us now. It's like, this is ridiculous, and I've told the parents, they said, no, it's just a bit of fun. And they can't see that it's not just fun, that they're encouraging each other to put inappropriate images on there. And that's just one small group of friends. How many more people are doing that?
And that's where you want people to be thinking about what are they encouraging their children to do. Again, I'm all for kind of positive reinforcement rather than don't where possible. You tell I haven't got kids. No, that's why I wasn't trying to give parenting advice. I was trying to give the sense of what was out there so people could make their own choices. And I met one of my friends on the train on Friday, and he said it takes so much energy having to keep on top of what they're doing. But you've always had that, whether it was what makeup people wore. This is just something else that is people's lives. So we need to understand it so they can deal with it.
I mean, on the flip side of that is the age for the phone. What age do you give a child a phone? Now, again, my daughter's 9, and I've had to buy a phone because there are times when I don't know where she is being here in this environment, and I need to make sure that she's safe, and she knows that she can phone me if she's in danger, but it's not smart then. All it does is take
I think that's
phone messages.
a lot of people living in rural areas, so they've given their child a mobile phone and not only that. So can you tell me if I'm supposed to know times? So I think again that's a decision that people have to make within themselves. And what I've written in the book with the Facebook is it's not actually legal to have a Facebook account. It's Facebook's terms and conditions that you're breaching. But it's kind of what kind of message are you giving to kids by saying, well, we don't need to worry about that one, but we need to worry about something else. Most parents seem to think 11 is an age that would be okay. So I've done, Tanya Byron had done an overview of the ages which went on for several pages, and I've condensed those into kind of a paragraph each in one chapter of the book to try to understand roughly what kind of age you need to be aware of different things.
Do you think that's changing quite quickly? Because the research that you quoted on phones, that makes sense. But again, doing Ethan John's work, I found that actually the age group that I had to sort of do mobile phone crash if we were playing games and stuff with was from 7 to 11s. It wasn't like, because my kind of 14 to 16s knew actually that if I was talking about a person who didn't involve a phone, they needed to put it away. 7 to 11s, because they were so used to having their phones, it's kind of normal to have them out. We're in a social environment, we'll have them out.
that was kind of, so I guess that's going to alter, isn't it? As
It's fine. I mean, you can get there was a phone that came out while I was writing for 4-year-olds, and it has like 9 numbers in it or something, so they can't access anything else.
Right.
And some people were saying, great if your child gets lost or whatever, and other people were saying, well, what on earth is your child doing on their own at 4 years old? Why on earth would they need one? So that's quite interesting.
I think that before you said it's like before you were trying to work out what makeup they had or stuff like that. I think actually that we need a book on parenting, because I think parenting is completely different in the digital age. You know, my kids are off at university. You know, Trues and I have spent a lot of time thinking about how we never had a phone when we went to university. We had to queue up at the end of the corridor. But now our kids can contact us immediately, you know, and so problems are immediately shared at home rather than resolved locally. Our kids have access to mobile friends, therefore have access to mobile friends all the time, 24/7. And therefore, you know, if there are problems or emotional disturbances and what have you, they don't leave them at school to be solved the next day. They bring them home with them, and they're just, you know, they're chatting about them in the bedroom and stuff like that. And so it's the 24/7 nature of digital culture, which is different for kids today, different for children today, and means that they're under different pressures than we were ever under when we were kids.
They're not all entirely different. I mean, I know the university. There's the whole. I mean, Sherry Turkle talks about digital ledge, but a lot of people are saying that the fact that kids come home and then talk to their friends online is the same as people used to do with telephone, but it's more frequent. And then it's, does the child have a phone in their room all the time? I mean, I'm starting to think, should I go out and get a traditional alarm clock? So that's not the first thing.
But if telephone call when I was a kid, you know, is a specific social interaction. Digital means your rapid fire textual responses, iMessaging and stuff like that. It's not the same as that one-off phone call that you might have or something like that. And that's a one-to-one kind of conversation. These are multiple level conversations with multiple people. They're the playground chat that is now.
This is all in the book.
Great.
But
it's not like it was when we were kids. There is a huge difference.
No, I mean, I think, you know, you're talking about telephone calls, whereas, you know, a phone call would most likely come for the adult, not for the child, and you have to be more. You would think differently about how you use a telephone, and now it's almost part of it's well, not almost, it is a part of everyday life, and so it's as natural as getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth, you know.
But I really don't want people who's thinking that they're totally out of control.
Well,
there is, you know, there's conversations that can be had. It is 2 o'clock, so I need to. Thanks. So I hope that's given some insight. That was that's the first time I've had a chance to really talk about my book. So yeah, I was trying to work out how I can summarise it in 20 minutes, which I don't quite do.